Where do I even start with this? Hi guys. It's been a while since I filmed anything for various reasons, but I guess if you've watched any of the more recent postings on my channel, then you know that we were pregnant, and I wasn't super clear on what happened and why I posted all 4 of those videos at once, because if you've watched the videos, I know I said that I was going to post them in sequential order at around the 12-week mark of my pregnancy, and in the description before I edited it, it said that we were expecting, and we told our whole family at that point if you were seeing the videos, which is true. However, I recently posted them, and I was about 7 weeks along in my pregnancy, and I kind of just posted them all at once with the little disclaimer in memory of our sweet pea, because we unfortunately had a miscarriage. I kind of just wanted to address it once on my channel so that it wasn't so confusing and there was no doubt as to what was going on. I've been meaning to film this for a while and haven't for various reasons, but I'm hoping to keep this short and sweet because it's a heavier topic and hard to talk about, which is one of the reasons why I haven't come on here and started talking about it yet. If you've watched any of the videos that I put up in the first pregnancy playlist that I have on my channel, then you'll know that I found out I was pregnant on July 7th. We had only been trying for 1 month. That was our first month trying. I actually found out the day before we left on our honeymoon. So I found out on July 7th, and we left for Florida on July 8th to stay the night there, and then we boarded our cruise ship on the morning of the 9th. On our honeymoon, we were gone for 10 days, so we didn't come back until July 18th. When we arrived back home on the 18th, we planned to tell our immediate family that we were expecting. At that point, I was only about 4 weeks along, actually, so I had kind of assumed that they were going to date back about 2 weeks for my missed period, even though I hadn't gotten another period after being off of birth control. So I thought I was a little bit further along than I actually was. So we ended up telling our family at around 4 weeks, and I've been meaning to put together a video of a compilation of us telling our family, because I've recorded everything, obviously. I think it's pretty easy to see that the videos that I made before finding out that we were having a miscarriage were recorded with intention and meant to be a very sweet documentation of our pregnancy journey. That's kind of why I wanted to go ahead and release them, because they were all ready to air on my channel in sequential order in September. So I need to go ahead and get around to making that video. So if it's posted by the time that this video is posted, I will link it above and in the description. If not, then it will be on my channel at some point. It's just a little bit hard to watch the reactions again, which is one of the reasons I haven't made it and one of the reasons I haven't recorded this. So we ended up telling my family the Monday after we got back, so I think that was the 19th, and then we told Elijah's family in the days following that. So that week we told pretty much all of our immediate family, who were all super excited. We scheduled our ultrasound appointment, I think the Monday we got back, but they didn't have appointments until August, like the beginning of August. And the first available appointment, Elijah was working that day, so I scheduled out for August 9th, which just so happened to be my parents' wedding anniversary. It was a Tuesday. So August 9th, we drove to Knoxville to have our first ultrasound appointment, and I actually have some recorded footage from that date, and I kind of explained like how far along I thought I was and the results of the appointment and the ultrasound. So I will go ahead and insert those clips here. Anyway, today is August 9th, and we are going to our first ultrasound appointment, and I don't know what they're gonna do. I think blood work and just our ultrasound, but I'll be interested to see like if I got the date right on how far along I am. So I think I'm 8 weeks 5 days, so I'll be interested to see what they put me at in terms of gestational age, and guys, it is much later in the day. It is now 8:30 at night. I wanted to give you guys a quick update on how the appointment went. So it turns out we are a little earlier than we expected to be. We only are measuring at 6 weeks today rather than 8 weeks 5 days like I thought I was going to be measuring at. So unfortunately, with that being said, that does push back the announcement date, the public announcement date, by a couple weeks. That, along with some of the things that the doctor told us, are making us want to wait a little later to announce. So the doctor was a little bit concerned about the baby's position because the baby is sitting right at the top of my uterus and towards the left, so she was a little bit concerned that the positioning was a little close to my fallopian tube, and if it's on the fallopian tube, then that would still be considered an ectopic pregnancy. So it's a little bit too early right now to tell exactly, so we're gonna come back in 2 weeks on the 23rd and do another ultrasound just to make sure of the baby's positioning. She was also a little bit concerned about the thickness of my uterine wall where it was implanted, but she double checked and she said that it was actually fine. And then she was also concerned about the shape of my uterus, because I'll try to put the ultrasound pictures up on either side of the screen because I took some after we left. We didn't get physical copies of the ultrasound this time because we're just too early and all you can see is a yolk sac, but she was concerned about the shape of my uterus. She said it's very possible that I have a heart-shaped uterus. It's not 100% confirmed yet just because it's so early and she can't really tell. And it's hard to know the shape of your uterus. Like, you would never know that unless you had a baby and got scanned. But she was concerned about the shape. She thought if I have a heart-shaped uterus, that increases the risk for preterm labor, breech delivery, and first trimester miscarriage. So with that being said, we kind of don't want to announce. We had somewhat talked about announcing publicly after our first ultrasound, which was today, but considering that we're 2 weeks earlier than what we thought we were, and the fact that there could be complications and increased risk of first trimester miscarriage for me, we are going to wait a little bit longer, probably until 12 weeks or at least 10, because we'd like to make sure that there's nothing wrong with the pregnancy and that everything is good before we announce to any more people, because we've already told a lot of people and we're only 6 weeks along, not to mention the possible complications. So we're just gonna wait. Like I said, our next appointment is August 23rd. So we're going to go and do another ultrasound and make sure that baby is measuring on track and that my uterus shape isn't non-conducive to the pregnancy or increasing the risk of anything or anything like that. Like the doctor said that even if I did have a heart-shaped uterus, then they wouldn't be proceeding any differently than we are now. We're still just going to wait and just see how things look in 2 weeks. And then she was also concerned about the placement, especially if I do have a heart-shaped uterus. If the baby is positioned at the very top, next to where the indention is, that can be a little bit worrying too. So yeah, wasn't all good news today, unfortunately. They didn't draw blood or anything, so they won't draw blood until the appointment after the next one. So we're going to do a Down syndrome screening, and she's also going, it's like a genetic screening, and they're also going to run my blood type and make sure that I have Rh positive blood, because Elijah's is Rh negative, and if I'm also negative, then I need a RhoGAM shot. So we'll see. If I'm I think if I'm Rh positive, I don't need it, but other than that, they're going to do another checkup in 2 weeks, and I need to film my 2-week wait symptom video because it's been a while since I did a checkup and I thought I was much further along than I am. So we need to do that for you guys because the last video that you guys saw was me announcing my pregnancy, which will still be in a few weeks. So and then I need to do a first trimester update about symptoms and things like that so far. So those 2 videos will be in the making eventually sometime soon. So once you guys see this one, or you'll probably see those before you see this one, maybe. But be on the lookout for those videos if they're already out. If not, be on the lookout for them. But other than that, yeah, I will update you guys soon. So as you can see in the clips, I thought that I was about 8 weeks, 5 days. That is what my pregnancy app had considered me, and that's basing off of like dating back 2 weeks from my missed period. I knew exactly when I ovulated. I ovulated on or around June 25th, and I got pregnant immediately after. If you haven't seen my 2-week wait video, I go over pretty much how I knew I was pregnant before I tested, or had an idea that I was probably pregnant, and how I doubted myself after I got 3 negative tests in a row, and then obviously found out I was pregnant on July 7th. So all of that is explained in that video, but I would like to make a more concise 2-week wait video about the symptoms that I'm going to be looking for next time we try to conceive. So look out for that. If it's already posted by the time this is up, then I will link it. If not, look out for it on my channel. So kind of to summarize, at the appointment, we found out that we were only 6 weeks along, which did coincide exactly with my ovulation date, so I was spot on about that. But the embryo did not have a fetal pole. It did not have a heartbeat. It seemed to be implanted kind of high in the left corner of my uterus, which did concern my OB. And she was also a little bit concerned that the proximity to my left fallopian tube was a little bit close, and that my uterus might be heart-shaped. I know there's a medical term for that, but it's escaping my mind right now. I think it's bicoordinate uterus or something similar to that. But she was concerned that on the ultrasound picture, which I will try to post somewhere in this video for reference, she was concerned that the ultrasound photo showed a little bit of an indentation in my uterus, like a heart shape. So she was a little bit concerned about that, and the heart-shaped uterus does come with a little bit more risks in pregnancy. So it increases your risk for first trimester miscarriage, and it increases your risk for preterm labor and breech delivery. So we were a little bit concerned about that, but there was nothing really that we would have done different until we found out for sure. So she scheduled me out for my next appointment on August 23rd for my 8-week 2-day ultrasound. At the time of my 6-week ultrasound, I was 6 weeks 2 days. We left that appointment kind of feeling like we got bad news, even though it wasn't necessarily terrible news, because you can continue a pregnancy that's implanted high, and you can continue a pregnancy with a heart-shaped uterus. It just increases your risks a little bit. Even though we weren't 100% sure that my uterus was shaped that way, waiting 2 weeks for the confirmation just seemed agonizing to us. And we just kind of felt like we got really bad news. And we didn't know that it literally in the coming days I would start miscarrying. So it all kind of happened really fast, and it was really overwhelming for us. I don't know, trigger warning for pelvic exams, blood, miscarriage, pregnancy loss, trauma, anything of that sort. If you're watching this video, then you probably expect those things, but I want to go ahead and put a disclaimer right here because I'm going to start talking about the gorier parts of it. If you've ever had a transvaginal ultrasound, then you know that you can have some bleeding afterwards. So I had not bled for the entirety of my pregnancy up until the day after my transvaginal ultrasound, and I started having a little bit of spotting. So that would have been Wednesday, August 10th, that I started experiencing a little bit of spotting. I wasn't cramping on the 10th, so we thought maybe it was just from the transvaginal ultrasound. It wasn't a lot of blood, so I waited it out to see if it would continue or get heavier. So the next day, Thursday, I had a little bit of sporadic cramping, so like one cramp every so often. They weren't really strong, but they were definitely noticeable. And the bleeding was a little bit more than just spotting. It was probably what you consider light bleeding, and it was bright red at times. So we went ahead and called my OB and got a hold of a nurse, and she scheduled me for blood work the following day, Friday, August 12th. She wanted to blood type me because my blood type was not in the system, and they were concerned that I might need a RhoGAM shot if my blood type was negative. And they also wanted to check my HCG and my progesterone levels because they weren't originally going to do that until the appointment after next. So I would have been probably like 10 or 12 weeks along by the time that they did any blood work. But since I was having bleeding that wasn't stopping, they wanted to go ahead and check and make sure. So I went in the morning of August 12th at around 10:30 in the morning to get my blood drawn. They did blood typing, and they also checked my HCG and my progesterone. So I went ahead and went home, and they told me that they wouldn't call me with the blood results over the weekend unless my RH factor was negative and I needed RhoGAM. So I waited over the weekend, and on Saturday we were really anxious because I looked at my patient portal on UT's website, and I saw that my progesterone level was 3.7, which for a 6, almost 7 week pregnancy, that's very low. I think it's supposed to be anywhere between like 5 and 11, and mine was only 3.7, so definitely not high enough to sustain a pregnancy. So I was really nervous, but they told me that they wouldn't call unless it was serious. So I kind of just assumed that if they hadn't called me, then I was probably going to be okay. The bleeding was still continuing, and I was still having sporadic cramping. So Saturday night, we were still kind of anxious, but we were just ready to go to bed. So I was working, and Elijah went to bed. And then around midnight on Saturday, I was about to get in the shower, which is really late, I know, but I'm more of like a late person. So I was working late, so I went to the bathroom, and I was getting ready to get in the shower. And as I was sitting on the toilet, I got the most intense cramp out of absolutely nowhere. And it kind of like stunned me. I was like, what is happening? So I checked, and I was bleeding a lot heavier than before, and it was bright red blood. So at that point, I started panicking a little bit because these are some of the things that they tell you to look out for in case of a first trimester miscarriage. And I know this is TMI, but I also had diarrhea beforehand, which is another telltale sign that you might be miscarrying. Not only that, but the day after the bleeding started, so Thursday on the 11th, my nausea magically vanished. So on the 10th, even though I was spotting a little bit, I noticed like midday I started spotting, I was still very, very nauseous from my first trimester pregnancy nausea. I was having a hard time eating, I was having a hard time drinking, and that night, out of the blue, on the 10th, I got hungry for something. So I had the rest of my leftovers from lunch, and I felt completely fine, which I thought was probably due to the fact that I had a little bit of protein, because I noticed that whenever I would eat protein, or specifically red meat, I would feel a lot less nauseous and a lot better and have more energy. The morning of the 11th, I woke up and I still had no nausea. And I continued to have no nausea the rest of the 11th, which I was kind of thankful for no nausea, but at the same time, I knew that wasn't a great sign for your pregnancy symptoms to start magically disappearing after you start spotting and cramping. So in the back of my mind, I kind of knew that it was a very high possibility that I could be miscarrying. Elijah kept, trying to deny it. He was in a lot of denial about it and not really validating my fears. He was kind of just telling me that I was overreacting, everything was fine, they would have called me. But I had a gut feeling that something was off. So after I had the first bit of cramping on Saturday night, well, early Saturday morning, it was midnight, Sunday morning, that I would go ahead and get in the shower and prepare in case I needed to go to the ER. So I took a shower really, really fast. I got dressed. I was ready to pick up and leave in case something happened, because I knew that it didn't feel right. And I was just sitting there like begging my body to stop cramping and begging my body to stop doing whatever it was doing that was making me lose the pregnancy. And I came upstairs and I woke Elijah up and I said, my cramping is getting way more intense. I'm bleeding a little bit more than I was before, and I'm a little bit scared that we might have to go to the ER. And he said, okay, well, let's just wait and see if your bleeding is more than a pad an hour, which is what they recommend for you to go to the ER, and we'll go from there. So I couldn't sleep, obviously, because I was in a lot of pain and I was also panicking. So I sat down at my computer and I started editing a little bit, because that's just what I do in my spare time, trying to get things done. And the cramping continued, and it was much, much stronger than it had been before. So by about 5:30 in the morning, I was absolutely writhing in pain in the bed, gasping for air because it hurt so bad. And I was really trying not to wake Elijah up, even though the pain was really intense. But I actually woke him up on accident because I was quite literally writhing in the bed from the cramps. And he asked me what was going on, if I had slept any. I said no. I said, but this doesn't feel normal. It doesn't feel right. I think something's wrong. And at this point, I was also shivering, like very violently. So he told me that with the chills and the shivering and the very intense cramping, that we were just going to go to the ER. So he made the executive decision to bring me to the ER. We left the dog at home. We left everything. And I put on some pants and we went to the ER. We got to the ER around 6 o'clock in the morning-ish. And at this point, I'm absolutely bawling my eyes out, because I know the moment that I get out of the car to go into the ER, I'm going to lose the baby. Like, I know. And I know it was going to happen anyway. I just didn't want to like go in and have it confirmed. So, and I was also really scared about what was going to happen. I didn't know what they were going to have to do, what they were going to have to perform test-wise, what they were going to tell me. I really had no idea. So we walk into the ER, get myself checked in. I got triaged, eventually admitted into the ER. By the time I got into the room, my cramps had slowed down a little bit, because I think I was just so upset and in shock that they kind of just slowed down. They asked me for a urine sample, and when I went to the bathroom, I was covered in blood, like a lot of blood. I just kind of sat there and was like, I can't believe that this is happening. Like, I knew that confirmed it for me, what was happening. And I told him, I know for sure, like, there's so much blood. I caught it everywhere, absolutely everywhere, trying to get a urine sample. So I think I was more in shock more than anything. Like, I'd already been upset, and I was just kind of stunned that this was happening. The nurse came and got my urine sample. They took some blood and they put it in IV, which I absolutely hated, because I hate the feeling of it. And the doctor went off of my previous levels from the Friday morning that I had my blood drawn. My HCG was around 9,600, which I think is still pretty low for a 6-week, almost 7-week pregnancy. And my progesterone was definitely way lower than it should have been. So he had those numbers to go off of, and he also pulled my ultrasound from my 6-week appointment to kind of check the placement and everything. So at this point, I'm bleeding through all of my clothes, all of the gowns, all of the blankets. I have like a mattress pad on the mattress. I'm bleeding through everything. And the cramps are getting much, much more intense. So they had asked me if I wanted pain medicine, but because of my autism, it makes it hard for me to swallow pills. So I thought they were going to bring me like Tylenol capsules or something that I wouldn't be able to swallow without food. So I just kind of declined it at first. But then after they had IV access, I asked them if they could give me something through the IV. Elijah's parents showed up and my parents showed up at this point, and it took them, I think, 45 minutes or so for the blood work, and then they came in and they did an ultrasound as well, just to verify that I was actually miscarrying. And when they did the ultrasound, they found that the embryo had kind of enclosed on itself, so that only the egg sac was remaining, and that was kind of shriveling in on itself, kind of confirming that I was indeed having a miscarriage. When my blood results came back, my HCG was only around 4,000, and I think my progesterone was much lower. I don't remember if they did that or if it's on the paperwork or not. My blood levels looked fine, glucose was fine, so I didn't need like a blood transfusion or anything, even though I lost so much blood that I swore I was gonna need one. They had to come in and give me IV morphine and muscle relaxers, anti-inflammatories, a whole bunch of different things, because the pain felt like contractions. At least what I imagine contractions would feel like and what people have described them to feel like to me. They came every 2 minutes and they were violently strong. Definitely a 10 on the pain scale for me. And there was just no position that was comfortable. I couldn't talk. I was just writhing. So when they finally came and gave me the IV medications, I also hated how that felt, because you could feel it like go through your body. So that was a sensory nightmare for me as well. I kept having to get up and go to the bathroom because I was drinking like water and trying to get like fluids into me, which also was a pain, because then they had to disconnect my IV every time I got up, and you had to have a nurse to do that. And I ended up being in the ER for about 6 hours for them to make sure that my pain was under control. I didn't need any other life-saving measures. The pregnancy wasn't ectopic, and it looked like I was passing it on my own. The doctor was very nice, and he confirmed that I was having a miscarriage, and that it wasn't anything that we did. So after my pain was under control, they had given me some IV fluids, but the IV was pushed up against a valve, so they kept having to adjust it, which also was a sensory nightmare for me. So I only got like maybe a third of the fluids, which by that point I was so exhausted because I'd been awake for over 24 hours and just ready to go home and go to sleep. So they confirmed that I probably had the worst part over with. I had a lot of bleeding by that point, and the cramping had been kind of alleviated with the pain medication and the other things that they were helping me with. So they went ahead and unhooked me and discharged me from the ER. I had some pain medication prescribed to me as well, so we went and picked that up. I went home, I took a shower, and I slept for a good amount of time. Probably like, I think I slept until 2 in the morning. We got home at like, I want to say 3 or 4 in the afternoon. And I slept until like 2 in the morning on and off. I ate a little bit in between and took medicine in between. I only ended up taking the prescription medicine twice because it ended up giving me a major headache both times that I took it. I don't know which medication it was that gave it to me, but after that I just ended up taking a couple Tylenol every time that I had strong cramping, which it was never as strong as it was in the hospital after that, but sometimes it was more noticeable than others. The bleeding eventually tapered off, and I was pretty much past the worst part of it. The next day, I think it was the next day, I let my OB know that I had gone to the ER for heavy bleeding and cramping, and that they had confirmed a miscarriage. So they brought me in for an emergency ultrasound to make sure that I had passed everything. The morning of the 16th, we went for an emergency ultrasound. So they did an ultrasound, and I think I have those pictures as well, but they confirmed that my uterus was completely empty and that everything looked fine. So I had passed everything on my own. I didn't need a DNC. So on my end, everything was looking good. I still had scheduled the appointment for the 23rd for what would have been my 8-week ultrasound. And they told me to go ahead and keep that so I could talk to my actual OB about next steps and how long to wait before trying again and things like that. So we kept my 8-week ultrasound appointment, and we went in, and unfortunately they weren't up to speed with what happened in the week prior. So when I got there, they asked me very excitedly if I had filled out new mom paperwork, which I already had, but there was a lobby full of people, and I had to explain why I didn't need to fill it out if I hadn't already. And of course the front desk person was mortified, but she made me take the clipboard with the new mom paperwork with me to the ultrasound room. And the ultrasound tech was also mortified that I still had this paperwork that, 1, I'd already filled out, and 2, even if I hadn't filled it out, I definitely wouldn't need it. She actually ended up going to the front desk after and just absolutely chewing out that person at the front desk for making me carry it and read through it again and everything, which is fine. It was just a communication error between the hospitals I'd gone to, because my OB is in Knoxville, but for the ER, I just went to the closest one. So then again, for my emergency ultrasound, I went to a different Knoxville location. So it was still like UT hospital. It was just a different location than the one I had been going to. So there was a miscommunication between all 3 locations. So at that point, my uterus looked completely clear. My lining was very thin once again, so my cycle had already begun to return. The bleeding had stopped actually on the 18th in mid-afternoon, and then I had a little bit of spotting on the 19th, and I think the tiniest bit of spotting on Sunday or Monday. So since then, my bleeding has completely stopped. All of my pregnancy symptoms are gone, with the exception of the sneezing and the runny nose from either the cats or the dog, which I'm pretty sure it's the cats. I have done a little bit of updating in some video clips that I've recorded recently regarding my HCG levels, because I wanted to see what the baseline was for right now, like what it looked like on a pregnancy test. I knew that there would still be HCG in my system. I just wanted to know how dark the line would be at this point. It's not very dark. I took 2 pregnancy tests. I think one was on the 26th and one was on the 27th. So I will try to insert those pictures somewhere in the clip here. But that's how much HCG is remaining in my system at this point. It's kind of bittersweet to watch your body return back to normal after losing a very wanted and very planned pregnancy. And it was kind of a good thing, you know, like that my body bounced back so quickly and did what it was supposed to do. But it was sad knowing that it took me 7 weeks to get to that point, and it was all gone within like 3 or 4 days. Whew. Elijah and I took a couple days off to grieve and talk through it with each other, which really helped. And we kind of decided that we might want to get memorial tattoos at some point, which is actually what I did today. Which is why I was already ready and just decided last minute to go ahead and film this while it was ready. So this is my memorial tattoo. This one right here, this flower is a sweet pea flower. This flower is a daisy. The sweet pea is partially because that's the size that they were when we lost them. Also, the sweet pea and the daisy are both April's birth flowers. I would have been due around April 4th, 2023. And then the butterfly to signify the symbol of my pregnancy. The daisy means innocence, purity, and true love, and the sweet pea means goodbye. So that's what I did today. Elijah is getting a tattoo tomorrow. I don't know if he's going to incorporate any remembrance pieces into the tattoo he's getting tomorrow, but I do know that he eventually does want to get a memorial tattoo, or at least incorporate some memorial symbols into a tattoo at some point. So that's kind of where we are now, and that's kind of what's been going on, why I've been absent from YouTube, aside from posting videos that I recorded months and months and months ago. I also wanted to make this video to kind of go into detail about why this was much more traumatic than it needed to be, and it has to do with politics. So if this is something that you don't want to hear or discuss, then you can go ahead and leave this video. But I want to discuss it because it's not talked about very often, my situations like mine, in regards to what's going on in Tennessee specifically right now, and also just to bring awareness to why things like this don't need to happen. So as we were going to the ER, my first thought was, first of all, how expensive it was going to be, which it ended up being like $3,600 for the ER visit. Thank God we had insurance, because I think it's only going to end up being like $300 for us. And I was there for like 6 hours. The second thought that I had was if they'd be able to help me or not, if in fact I did need a DNC or if it was ectopic, because they were concerned about the proximity to my left tube at the first ultrasound, but it was still in my uterus. But if it implants kind of in your uterus but partially on your tube, it's still considered ectopic, and it does require surgery. It does require a surgical abortion. So obviously that's still in the back of my mind, because we had not yet confirmed that, being only like less than a week from our prior appointment. I'm pretty sure that on Thursday, August 25th, it became a Class C felony in Tennessee for any physician to perform an abortion for any reason. There are no exceptions. There are only affirmative defenses that you can argue in court. That being said, the fact that I miscarried only 10 days before that went into effect in Tennessee was really scary for me. I was also really concerned that at the 8-week appointment on Tuesday, they would tell me that it was in fact considered ectopic and I would only have 2 days to figure out what I needed to do, or if they could even save my life. Not only that, but if my body had not done what it was supposed to do in the spontaneous miscarriage, then I would have needed a D&C. And that, again, is another life-saving measure that would be prosecuted and would be a Class C felony here in Tennessee. For situations like mine, where there was nothing I could have done to prevent the occurrence of the miscarriage, it was likely an implantation placement issue or an early genetic issue that caused it, I could have very well been on death's door before they were able to help me. And even then, they would still have to go to court and defend why they gave me a surgical abortion that was medically necessary. There are no exceptions for the life of the mother. There are no exceptions for other things that would require an abortion. And of course, there's no exceptions for mental health of the mother or whether or not the mother even wants to be pregnant. I don't know. I've never discussed this on my channel, but I am very pro-choice. I've always been very pro-choice. And if that's not you, then this is my channel and I have the right to say what I want. So, that being said, if there are any comments regarding abortion as not healthcare, treated as not healthcare, or anything like that, I will delete them. There will be no arguments or discussion on my page. I just won't have it. This added so much unnecessary trauma to my situation that I just won't be allowing it, and that's just a boundary that I won't allow anyone to cross on my channel. That being said is another reason why I wanted to record this video, because I'm being very vulnerable and letting people into my private life, and I feel like this is something that could cause much more trauma down the road if they were to like look into and investigate my miscarriage or decide to prosecute me or the doctor or something, you know, for something that happened spontaneously and that happens in 1 in 4 pregnancies, which obviously it has happened in other states. So it's just a really scary time to be a pregnant person. It's a very scary time to be trying for kids. Not only for the cost of it in the United States, but also for the fact that you could be prosecuted for needing a medical procedure regarding your pregnancy. So I just wanted to speak out about that on my page and on my channel and let people know that when these politicians say that there's never a medical need for an abortion, it's just blatantly false, and it could have happened to me, and I very well could have died if that were the situation. So just, if you're someone who is in favor of these laws in Tennessee or elsewhere, and you're with the politicians and you think that there is never a medical need, there is oftentimes. And it's just something that I don't feel that politicians should be interfering with between me and my doctors if I need emergency care or if I need care at all. Anything that happens to my body, I have consent. I have to give consent for. That's my story. Please keep the comments civil and nice. If not, I will turn them off. I will delete you. I will block you. Just wanted to give an update and explain why this was much more traumatic than it needed to be in regards to the state law, and kind of bring awareness to early pregnancy loss, because again, it is 1 in 4, but I rarely ever see people talk about it. And of course, this was a very wanted and planned pregnancy. I mean, if you've watched any of the videos that I've already posted, then you know that. So that's my story, and I guess I will see you in the next one, hopefully a more lighthearted video. Bye.